Question 7b. The diagram below shows a 300 Newton load suspended by two cords. What is the tension in the horizontal cord? So here in this question, I have a load of 300 Newton. So we can write the weight of the load to be equal to 300 Newton. And it is suspended by two cords. We will call them cord 1 and 2. And we need to find the tension in the horizontal cord, which is cord 1. So let us first show all the forces acting on the load. First is the force due to gravity Fg, which acts vertically down. And the weight of the load is nothing but the force due to gravity acting on it. So we can write the weight W to be equal to Fg. Then we have the tension in the cord. So for cord 2, we can show the tension pointing towards the suspension point. I will write this tension as T2. And we do the same thing for cord 1. The tension pointing towards the suspension point, we will call this T1. As we can see from the figure, T1 is along the x-axis, Fg is along y-axis, whereas T2 is neither on the x-axis nor on the y-axis. So we will split T2 in its component. One component that goes along the x-axis, we will call this T2x. The tension T2 is making an angle of 45 degree with its x component. So I can write T2x to be equal to T2 cosine theta, as it is the side which is adjacent to the angle theta. The other component goes along y-axis. We will call this T2y, and T2y is equal to T2 sine theta. So these are all the forces acting on the load. And now we are going to use equation of net force to find the value of T1. Since the load is not moving, the net force acting on the load is equal to 0. And if the net force is 0, sum of all forces along x-axis and sum of all forces along y-axis should also be equal to 0. So I can write F net along y-axis to be 0. Along y-axis, we have two forces, Fg, which is pointing down, T2y, which is going up. So we can write for F net y as T2y minus Fg equals 0. By convention, T2y is positive because it is going up, Fg is negative because it is going down. Now substitute for T2y and move Fg to the other side. T2y is T2 sine theta. When you move Fg to the other side, this becomes equal to positive Fg. So that gives me T2 to be equal to Fg over sine theta. I will call this equation 1, and we will use this later to find T1. Now let's do the same thing along x-axis. We know F net along x-axis will also be equal to 0. Again, we have two forces along x-axis. T2x, which is going to the right, so we will take it positive. T1 is going to the left, so we will take it negative. So I write T2x minus T1 equals 0. So that gives me T1 to be equal to T2x. T2x is nothing but T2 cosine theta. And T2 we found from equation 1. It is equal to Fg over sine theta. Substitute that here. So Fg over sine theta times cosine theta. Now substitute the value. T1 will be, Fg here is the weight, 300 Newton. Cosine, the angle theta is 45 over sine 45. And when you solve this, you get tension in cord 1 to be equal to 300 Newton.